door popper reverse installation video. What does that mean? Well, it means I'm actually taking them out of this vehicle. This vehicle looks a little rough. That is part of the reason I'm taking it out of it. But I'm going to walk you through door poppers, what they do, why they're cool, why you might want them, how would you install them. I'm installing this vehicle, I'm taking them out, and I'm going to walk you through what I would do differently if I were installing this again, when I wouldn't install these. So why are door poppers cool? Well, you hit a button on your key fob and your door opens. You generally see this in a hot rod or sport truck. In all installations, typically what you'll see is there's no door handle, no key, no visible way to get into the truck unless you have a key fob. You hit that button and you hear a loud pop, which is your actuator, your solenoid, or your door popper, and your door opens. Now, depending on how you install this, it may open that much, just enough for you to get your fingers behind there and open it. There may be some where they don't pop and you really need to grab it from the top really quickly to get it open. So the question is, why would you do that? Why do you do anything with a sport truck or a hot rod? Because it's cool. Why have I lowered this thing where it's closer to the ground and scrapes every speed bump? Because it's cool. That's the reason to do door poppers. You were to look at this door, no handles, no way to get in. Like, well, how would you get in? That's just cool. It's a neat trick, and that's why you would have a door popper. Now, I installed it on this vehicle. I never got around to shaving the handle. The handle stayed. I got a vehicle after this. I installed the same kit on that vehicle. I actually shaved the handles where you actually have to cut out that handle, that key cylinder, put in a patch panel. I didn't do the welding. I don't know how to weld yet. I had somebody do that, and I installed the poppers, and it just looks really slick. Now, the kit I used both times. I bought it from a company that is no longer in business. They were a distributor, but it's an Autolock kit. Autolock sells all kinds of actuators and different things for applications like this. You know, if you want aftermarket power windows, power door locks, anything like that, they sell kits for that, and they sell a lot of kits for door poppers because it's all kind of the same thing where you have an actuator. So how does the thing actually work? This is the actuator. This is a beefy one. I don't quite remember. It's been 15 years since I installed these. It is, I think, either 50 or 75 pound. And basically, remember in science class, you talk about electromagnets? This is an electromagnet. There's power to it. There's a power terminal here. You ground it to the frame, the body of the actuator. You hit the button on the key fob. It sends a signal to a remote control box. That remote control box sends that signal through a relay, through power, powers this actuator. And what happens is, this actuator goes in for a split second. And it pulls this cable, and in the case of door poppers, that cable is attached to your door latch. And so it pulls the latch mechanism to unlatch your door. Your door opens, and you don't need a handle, you don't need a key. So you don't need a handle because this opens the latch. You don't need a key because you can't lock or unlock it. There's just no way. All it has is a latch. You can't pull on a handle to open it. It only opens with the key, so there's no need for a lock cylinder. There are installations where somebody may just put a push button on the door. I wouldn't recommend that for a daily driver or really any car because there's no security there, and I want security. So this is the basis of my installation. There are a few things I had to navigate around in the door panel. I have the window track, and so I wanted to be below the window track. And so this sheathing, I didn't want my cable to rub against the window track or in the supports in the window, so I wanted that sheathing there. Now, so that sheathing didn't just slide up and down and not actually do its job. I had a little bracket that I attached to the door panel, and this is just a stop for the sheathing. So when the cable is pulled, that sheathing doesn't just come to the actuator, it stops, and the cable slides in that sheathing. At the door, now I did look at my door latch. I figured out what actually controls the latch. So this is one of the latches. You pull this that way, it lifts this rod up, opens the latch. That is the interior handle. On the outside, pull this handle up. There's a little rod here that goes down. When that rod goes down, it pushes this down, it unlatches your door. There's nothing in that hole as a free hole, so I ran my cable through that hole, so my actuator pulls down, opens the handle. This is just a standard crimp connector to crimp the wire for my actuator. This, I think I got this from a bike shop. It's a wire stop. There's a ball, there's like a little ball, a little bearing in here. So that way the screw does not twist and tear up your wire. You tighten this down, it tightens this. So that way you have something to pull against. So when it pulls, it opens the door. That is how this works. Now, how do you actually get it in the door? So this is my door panel. Now you can see I've got the location of where my actuator was. Now there are a few problems I have with that. Now, why did I install it right there? Well, you look at this door, you've got this window. I want to keep my window operational, so that really negates it putting it anywhere here. Why? Because the actuator is wider. The only way I can mount it is on the inside. If I mount it on the outside, I have bolts in my door skin. Don't want that. So it needs to be on the inside door skin. Well, anywhere here at the window, the actuator is too wide to fit between the window and the door panel, so it's got to be below the window. This is the window at its lowest. You can definitely, when you're installing, put your window at its lowest to make sure you've got it right. Now you can see I've got just a little bit of space there, not much. You can see my wires run just below the window. And so I mounted it as high as I could, low enough to clear the window. The thing I don't like about this installation, these bolts show my door panel stops right here. So those bolts showed. Not a huge deal, did find it annoying. Inside the door, you can see that is my window track. There's a support that runs back to the door, so my wiring needed to go underneath that to the latch. To the latch, you can see that hole right there where it's kind of gray. That is where my door latch is, so my wire needed to run roughly to that location. You can see that is a piece of wire I have, just showing you where it would go. And I don't have the wire latched to this solenoid, but I've got a second solenoid in there showing you where, because I'm going to show you where I would install this if I were doing this again. Because I didn't like this, my bike sheathing, if you're wondering what that was, that is bike cable. That is part of a bike brake. It worked well for this application. I like to keep things simple. The simple solution, we have the actuator and latch in an orientation like this, where this cable is right here, this pulls straight down, pulls the latch, boom, we are set. Why didn't I do that in this installation? The answer is because I couldn't. I've got glass all through here. My latch is right here, so the only place I could put it is right in this area. Well, the window stops right here. So I can't put it here because I don't have enough space. So I got to get all the way to down in this area. And you see that bolt? Well, that bolt is in one side of the bracket. This is where I would put it now. I would not need the sheathing and the little bracket as a mediator. This is where my bracket was before, because I put this bracket here so that the cable ran right into the actuator straight. Because I wanted a good, strong pull. I didn't want to kind of pull it at an angle because you don't get quite enough travel. This is where I install it now. Let's jump in there. That is actually, you can kind of see the cable. The cable would just clear the corner of the window. I don't want it scratching my window. You don't want scratched up glass. But that actuator is cocked at an angle. The actuator is running like this. So it pulls down. That outside latch I'd have it connected to is right on here on the inside. It pull down right in line with the actuator. That's how I install it. And guess what? My bolts not visible from outside of the door panel. And so you can see this is the wire. This wire would run, that latch is about right here. So it would angle behind my window track. You see my window track right there. It pulled about right here, completely clearing everything. Don't need this extra sheathing cable. I just didn't think about it at the time. I don't know what I was thinking. It was 15 years ago. Who knows what I was thinking? But I just knew this needed to come down, and the only flat spot I saw was right here to get all 4 my bolts. Now this, I would need to do some spacers. This is the, let's see. This is a bottom bolt, so my other bolt might be in here. Might not be able to get to that one. I'd have a bolt here, here. So I'd have to figure out how to space that to bolt that in. At the time, I was just thinking, hey, this is a flat spot. This is below the window. This works. Now, I did have to solve the problem of I'm pulling down here, but I'm pulling horizontally here. What do I do with that? Well, that is exactly why I had this bracket. That made that transition to where it was coming down at an angle, and then it was horizontal. Now, it worked. I had door poppers in this. They worked for a long time. The only reason I used the handle was to open the door. So I had poppers on this vehicle. I used them for years. Now I did have to do some adjustment every now and then. I don't know if the cable stretched. I don't know if my little stopper at the end would kind of slide over time. But I would have to do some adjustment. So as a precaution, I did have a manual entry, a manual release, because I just didn't quite trust the door poppers enough. Like, yeah, your battery goes dead. You can put on extra terminals. You can have an extra button. You can do different things. But I wanted a manual release so that no matter what was going on, I had a way to get in. I will show you how I did that. Now I ran with poppers on this for a number of years. The only thing I used the handle for was just to open the door. I did put in some billet pushers to push the door open. I installed them in what I thought was a good location. Turned out to be a bad location. There is a better way to do that. But I liked door poppers on this, but I would not install door poppers on a daily driver. I had to adjust these a couple of times, and there is nothing more terrifying than when you put the popper, the door does nothing. It doesn't open, you can't get in, you're like, oh crap, which is why I have a manual entry. Most of the time, if one door didn't work, the other would, where I could get in, but I didn't like having to adjust it. I showed you that there's a power terminal here. You ground it to the body of the actuator. Now these wires, they run through this door. You can see them right in there. And there is a factory grommet and wire loom that goes from the door into the cab. I ran my wires through that. Now, if you don't have a factory grommet, the truck I did the second install on, this same kit, they have a wireless contact where you have a little contact area you would bolt right here. It's got 2 metal squares that are contacts. You have a second set of wireless contacts you would mount right here on the door. 2 squares. Those squares are like spring actuated, or no, one side spring actuated, where they touch. When they touch, you've got power across them. Now, if the door's open, the door poppers wouldn't work. Well, if the door's open, it doesn't matter. Their wire feeds into those wireless contacts on one side, on the other side. That's how it worked. Put it in another truck. Worked really well. And the nice thing is it had like a rubber boot around it just to keep the water away from them. That rubber boot wanted to straighten out, so it would push the door open from here. Now on this one, I got these, I don't know. I mean, I don't think these were billet the way they're rusted, but it's just a spring-loaded popper. Now you can see it's rusted. It doesn't really spring very much anymore. So I had this little bump stop here, factory rubber bump stop here. Great place for this pusher to push the door open so that when I hit the button, you know, you want the door open just enough to where you can kind of put your fingers behind it and open it. That's how these things operate. Problem is, this thing did not push out far enough to push the door out. I mean, I think it has more travel than that. It just never pushed far enough. I adjusted out as far as I could. Like if I were to, it screws on, tight, lower, loose, you know, longer, shorter. I can never screw it out far enough to actually push the door open. What should I have done? What could I have done? I would think, I'd have to look to see what's here. This is not very thick. Maybe the button goes here. I think a great place might be right in here from the mechanical advantage. I don't know. I'd have to look into it, make sure I have the clearance here to do it, make sure I can reach behind it to screw it in there. But I think right here would be a great spot where the door opens. With this one, it's never much of a problem. I can just pull on the door handle to get to it. With my other vehicle, that little rubber boot for the wireless contacts, it would push the door open just enough where I could get my fingers behind the door and the opening. That was fine. My wires did go through this grommet. From here, I have 2 wires going through this grommet into the cab. One is a ground. That is my ground right there. The other side, I mean, you do one door, the other door is the same exact thing. And that's how I done this. Once I figured out one door, you got both doors figured. I did put in 2 rubber grommets going through that plastic paneling. See, they did not fare well. They kind of got loose and came out. You know, best intentions and all. So my ground is right there. There's a power wire that just snakes up across the dash to my brain box. My brain box is in the glove compartment. Will I put it there again? No, probably not. So there's an instance that would be good for self-tapper. That was my ground right there. I was running my power and my ground to the solenoid. But this is the ground for the solenoid, for the main box. And I ran a bolt through there and put a nut on the back. It is not easy to get to the back. See, you got that little place there. You got to work your fingers through. It was not easy. It's an instance where you want a self-tapper that threads into the metal. So what do you need for a door popper installation? You need the actuator. Now they sell 10, 20, 30 pounds. I don't know. This is either 50 or 75. Probably 30 pounds would have done it, but you never know. And you don't want to buy something that doesn't work and then only to realize, oh, I should have bought the one higher up. So I went ahead and bought the 50, 75. That's what most people recommend when I looked at this 15 years ago. So you need the actuator. You need, now this auto lock, this distributor I bought from, it's auto lock. It came with the brackets, came with pretty much just about a complete kit other than the wiring, some of these grommets, some of these terminals. I believe everything else, I think it even came with the wire. I don't quite remember that part. The little stops, I did supply those because I wanted some amount of adjustability. Because I think when I first did it, I did have the crimps on the end, and then I had to adjust the first time because either the wire got loose or something got loose, and I was like, all right, well, if I'm gonna have to adjust this every so often, I don't have to cut this wire and put in a new wire every single time. So that's why I had those stops. I believe I got those from my bike shop. Once you have power to this thing, you need the power. You know, hopefully you avoid the sheathing and the brackets and all that, and you can just connect it directly to your latch. Well, you need a brain box, and you need a remote or a button or something that actually tells the solenoid to activate to open your latch. I would definitely recommend getting the little pusher that will push your door open. It just makes it easier instead of, because if you don't have that, you're gonna have to grab your door really quick to grab it and open it, you know, right around the edge. And you can mess up your paint that way. If the door pushes open just an inch, well, that's enough to get your fingers behind there and open it. The wireless contacts is great if you're, like this truck came with factory door locks, factory windows, so I had that grommet and loom going from the door to the cab. Perfect way to run my wires. If you didn't, my other vehicle I installed this on, it did not have that. I used the wireless contacts, and they worked great. Now they did get rusty after a number of years, but you know, if you, probably some silicone grease would have helped that. Should have done that, didn't. I did grease my actuators, you know, just the shaft part of it. Did grease that so they would stay in well working order. And I told you I installed it on this truck, installed it on a different truck. I did that install the exact same way. Like I kind of figured out here, it's like, well, if I got it once, I do it again. I did tell you this time, I would install it so those bolts will not be visible from the door panel. I would install it so that the actuator is angled right to the latch, so I don't have to have an extra bracket or sheathing. You know, it's been 15 years. I've learned a little bit since then. I do things differently now. So here is the pusher, and you can see this one looks like it's a lot longer than the one in my vehicle. That's because this truck sat for 5 years. Nobody touched it, so with the door shut, it's kind of pushed in like that, and it just rusted there. And all this is, it's got a bolt, and then this end, and you push it in, and so it's spring-loaded. That has quite a bit of tension, and the plan is, or the goal is, that it pushes your door out when you hit this popper, because it's always under tension. You hit the popper, push the door out enough for you to get your hand behind it and open it. Now, on the other vehicle I did this on, I did not install these. I thought about it, never got to it, because the little rubber boot, it did enough to push it up. Now, that rubber boot, over time, gets compressed. It does not have the spring it once does, so you would have to kind of grab your door quick. But this popper, I mean, in theory, it works great. Now, you can screw it in to adjust it so, you know, if you need it closer or farther. This is just about all the way out. That's about all the depth it has. You can see, I mean, that's a fair amount of force. That's what, maybe 3/4 of an inch of push. That should work in most applications. Now, the thing you need for all this to work is a brain. So I get power for the brain box directly from this fuse box. This is the fuse box just inside the truck below the dash. There is, if you look at the top, very top, there's a terminal that says power, and I've just got a spade in terminal on my wire. So you can see that is my, this right here is my wire, and that is spade in terminal. That is the in terminal. It just goes right into the fuse box. Fuse box, there's just a spot on it, like right in there. It just says power, that wire fits right into it. Internal goes into the fuse box, and then the wire runs all the way to the brain box in the glove box, and that's how this whole system gets power. This is my brain box. So in the Autolock kit, and I looked at Autolock today, you can still get their kit. It does not come with this box or everything mounted like this. It just kind of comes everything loose. The brain is on the bottom, and when I say brain, it's basically a receiver. When I hit my remote, it sends a signal to that receiver. That receiver sends signals to these relays. Now, if you notice, I've got 4 relays. Why? I had this set up, I mean, it came like this basically, a relay for each of my front doors and then 2 relays for the rear hatch. This is a Blazer. I wanted a relay for the lift glass and the tailgates. And I'll talk about that briefly. Very much similar situation, type of installation. So when you hit the remote, send a signal to the receiver. Receiver sends a signal to the relay. And so I've got power coming into this system. I have it grounded. This ground goes to the same ground in the kick panel that the passenger door solenoid's on. They share a ground. This thing is grounded. It's got power from my fuse box. And then it's just power wire to the driver door, power to the passenger door, power to the lift glass, power to the gate. Now this one runs across the dash through the kick panel into the door. This runs right down into the kick panel into my passenger door, which is conveniently right there. You can see there's my wires. I'm installing all this stuff. I'll get into that. You ground each solenoid to the body, to the bracket of a solenoid, and then like here I've got it grounded to the kick panel in the rear. I don't remember how I grounded that. I have not pulled all that out yet. But this is it. Be sure to ground it. This is 12 gauge wire. You might could go with something thinner. I believe either I had 12 gauge in hand or I thought, hey, let's go big or go home, go overboard. Make sure that however you ground it, like if you use 12 gauge for your power, you need to use 12 gauge for your ground. You need to match power and ground. If you went skinny on the ground, well, it's probably not going to work. Now, right now, this system does not work. If you look, you can see a fair amount of corrosion around those wires. I'm guessing that might be my problem. So this is kind of a master override switch. Push that, like this whole project, this Blazer sat for 5 years. I've just now gotten it running. Now I'm kind of going through, getting it ready to go. I am uninstalling this because I'm going to sell this Blazer. And most people want a stock vehicle. They don't want somebody else's project or half-finished project. While all this stuff worked, I'm going to take it out. You know, save the new owner some headache trying to figure out what did this guy do with this thing. So when I pushed that button, I heard one of these relays click. My actuator did not click, one of the relays clicked. I pushed it since then, nothing happens. Don't know what the deal is with that. Now, you know, it would be good to maybe label some of this stuff, but I just kind of knew and I've always remembered. You know where your power is. You know this is, what is this? This is for the override. There's a key override switch where if you want to turn your poppers off. You know, I don't know in what situation you do that. I really Don't need that. Came with the kit, so that's why I have it. That is it. So this remote, like you watch, it lights up. I had 2 remotes. My main one I lost. Don't know where it is. This was my secondary backup. This battery came with this remote 15 years ago. So while it lights up, this might be doing just enough to light up the remote. And I mean, nothing popped. I didn't hear any clicks or anything. I think this button is just a channel button. In my primary remote, I think I ran poppers on this for maybe 5 to 6, 8 years. I don't know. I had to replace the battery at least once, maybe twice. And you just had to make sure that you're on the right channel. And if you push channel, that's to turn like red, green, blue, a couple different colors. I just know it needs to be on red. I can't tell you the science behind that, but that is your remote. It is important. And the key is one of those little, cell cylindrical batteries. I put this brain in the glove box. I would not do that again. It was convenient. It was easy to run wires across the dash of the driver door, right in the kick panel to the passenger door, ground right there. I did run my wires to the rear of the car. I think under the carpet. I don't remember. I'm in the process of pulling all this out. I wanted to create a video of this because you see these installation videos like, hey, how to install door poppers. But you don't usually see a video of, hey, I installed door poppers 15 years ago. Here are my thoughts. Here's what I would and wouldn't do now. Would I install door poppers on a daily driver? I wouldn't. I daily drove this with door poppers. Had to adjust them a few times. It's always scary when you can't get in your vehicle, and especially if you don't have a manual backup. That's why I have a manual backup, and I will show you that. My second vehicle I installed them on, that was kind of a not a daily, then it became a daily, then it wasn't a daily. I would install it, like if it's a weekend warrior or like kind of a show car or something that you're not driving today, I would put door poppers on. Why? Because they are awesome. Like it just, if you're like a car person that you see a car where the handles are shaved, it's just cool. It is too cool. And you've got to do it for that reason. But I would not put them on daily. Now, I am taking them out of this vehicle because I'm selling this thing. And somebody else don't want to fool with this. The chances that they want to do that. Now if the handles on this were shaved, well, I'm not going to take it out then because there's no way to get in and out of this vehicle. But I'm just going to put it back stock because when you're looking to buy a car, most of the time you want it stock or done. You don't want a project. And you've seen this thing. It's a project. Show you the rear hatch area. I installed a solenoid here and here. I'm trying to make it symmetrical. Had my wires. I ran the power wires in through this grommet. Could not fit the ground wires in through this grommet. So I ran them here through the jam. It looks, let's be honest, it looks crappy. I think I've had it grounded somewhere just on the side panel. I don't know. I like to do it differently. The way to do it really is to get a second grommet and run it through and do it that way. What I've done, I had a solenoid right here. It's actually still in place. This is the factory solenoid for the lift glass. There's a button in the cab, push the lift glass. Where's I left that in? I'd taken it out. It's like, oh, I got the key. I don't need that button. But that button would be nice. So this factory solenoid, it's got this end. It clips into the latch right here. I just put my wire and stopper in there. And the lift glass worked great off of the button for just about the whole time. It stopped working towards the end of when I was driving this. And that is not because of the actuator or the key. This latch, it's gotten old and rusty and gunky, so this thing was not popping. I cleaned it, stripped it, lubricated it, and this thing works great. So that thing would have worked great. The problem I ran into trying to get a solenoid to activate the tailgate. You've got these rods in here. See that rod? It's got an adjustment in where you can screw it on tighter. And so I had tightened it all the way down to where you would turn the latch like half an inch to get it to open the tailgate. Well, that actuator pulls only about half an inch. So I could never quite get it tight enough to do what I needed to do. Before I had this, you would turn the latch like a whole inch to get it to unlatch. The actuator just could never quite get it working, could never find a good way to attach it. This is very hard to drill into. Believe me, I tried. And ultimately I decided it's got a handle. I'll just use it that way. Again, if I were doing this again, I would do things differently. You live and you learn. So here's my passenger door. Just taking that solenoid out. So here is my manual release. This is the door handle rod. You see, here's the door handle on the inside. I've got a loop of cable tied right there. Where does that go? Well, I've got, you can see that, you can see, you got sheathing. That sheathing runs through the door into the jam. Now there's the grommet on the driver's side I showed you. I can't open this door anymore. I'm in a garage. But I just ran it right through the edge of the grommet out. It runs right inside the fender that way. So my emergency release, I ran it from the jamb into the fender, and it came out in that opening right here. I ran it down the fender, and then just right down to where I could reach in the fender well from the outside, grab the end loop, pull it to get the door open. Now, you needed to pull it kind of like this way towards the front of the vehicle because that's the way the latch runs. Like, if you run perpendicular to the latch, it's not going to open it. You got to run it in the direction of the latch. But I had a loop there, and the loop just stuck out just into the fender well that I could reach it from the outside. To release the door handle, when you pull that thing, you are pulling the end on the back towards the front of the vehicle. So that's why I ran it this way. Now, if it pulled the other way, like, you need to run in the direction of the door handle to release it, because if the door handle would move the other way to release it and you're pulling it this way, we're just pulling it shut, you're pulling it tighter. You don't want to do that. So the door handle moved this way, the cable moves this way, so it would release the door. Now, it works better to have a second person. Now, sometimes I would kind of be at the front of the car, I'd pull it really tight, and I'd kind of like loop around, try to grab the door really quick. I did manage to do that a couple of times, but it's good to have a manual entry. I've seen some where like there's a key and the cable's attached to the key, and you turn the key and it does it. I thought about doing that. I have the kit to do that. I just never got around to actually mounting that. I never was quite sure it would work. Now, I did leave the interior door handle hooked up. That was the only rod hooked up, but it worked great. I like door poppers. I'm going to put them on another vehicle for sure. I like the auto lock kit. I would get the auto lock kit again. I mean, I may do some research, see what other kits are out there, but the auto lock kit, it's complete. Now I'm going to keep all these solenoids. I think the auto lock kit, I believe it comes with everything you need. It comes with all the wires you need. I don't think it's wired up, pre-wired. I think you have to wire all the relays together. It comes with instructions, so I think it'll be fine. This guy I bought from the supplier, they wired it all up. Like that box, that brain box, the receiver, it came just like that, ready to mount. Where would I mount it? I don't like the glove box. I mean, it really kind of takes away some of the usability of that. If I had a center console, I may install it in the center console. Under the seat, I have a full-size truck. I have an amplifier under the seat. Well, under the passenger seat, I could put this brain box. That way, it's out of the way. You don't have to worry about it, and you don't lose your glove box. There's different options. I mean, this is how I did it. You may find a different way. Every vehicle is different. Inside the door is different. But, the concepts I told you, those definitely apply. Like, you need the actuator in line with your latch. If your latch comes down, you want the actuator in line, so that's pulling down. Because if that latch comes down and your actuator's pulling the side, you're not going to do anything. When you're figuring out how the length of your wire and the stopper, so the actuator, it needs to bottom out. It wants to bottom out. If it doesn't bottom out, you're going to have a problem. It's not going to stop till it bottoms out. So what I did, I would clamp down the actuator, bottomed out, and then figure out my wire and give just, maybe a little bit more, like an 1/8 inch leeway, just a little bit of slack. But you don't want much, because especially with these latches on this S10, you pull the latch 3/4 of the way, it's not going to latch. It's that last quarter where it actually unlatches where you can open the door. So you have to keep that in mind, because if you are not getting that last quarter and you're too loose, nothing's going to happen. The actuator's going to activate, it's going to pull, but it's not pulling enough to disengage the latch so you can open the door. But you do need a little bit of slack, because if you have it too tight, like if the actuator is out and that wire is completely tight and taut right there, well, the actuator it's going to pull, it's going to latch, and the actuator is going to want to keep pulling. So that is a lot of information on door poppers. I want to make this so you know what you're getting into, so you have a little bit of guide, some ideas when you're installing yours. And then plus, I just wanted to condense all my thoughts, all my experiences into a video, so that when I install these again, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's good to think of, because I may forget, and I'm thinking about it now as I'm uninstalling this. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how I did this. I remember how I did that. So I wanted it in one spot so that I can refer to it, because sometimes I forget stuff. And this way, I don't need to worry about remembering it, because I've got it in video. And I will definitely install poppers. I'm thinking, as I'm taking it out of this vehicle, I might install it on my full-size truck. I know I said no door poppers on a daily driver, but I wouldn't install it to the door latches. I would install it to the door locks. My daily truck, it does not have power door locks. So I can use this remote and have power door locks, but if my door poppers or remote, if anything fails, well, I still have the key on the door and I can manually get in. I've got that backup, which is great, but for daily, everyday driving, I can have power door locks, which would be awesome. I mean, you can do these, you can attach your solenoids to all kinds of things, be it your door latch, be it your door locks,